question is from PJ Cliff. I have a fairly labor-intensive job that involves a lot of bending and lifting in front of me. How should I adapt my workout to fit my activity? Should I focus on pressing movements to counter the pulling I do at work, or should I just stick to a balanced routine?
Ooh, MAP Strong would be great for this person.
Yeah.
Good upper back strength in that program, and there's rounded back lifting that's in that program, like that.
Which you do have to train.
Yeah.
Yeah, which would be a good idea for you to train that.
Your best bet with repetitive chronic movements where you're doing the same kind of movement over and over again, you run the risk of having of encountering these overuse injuries.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you're doing this kind of a job where you're bending over a lot and lifting in front of you, you run the risk of having probably lower back problems. So I would say work on hip hinging exercises and then work on a lot of mobility.
Mm-hmm. And core strength.
Yeah, because when you do mobility movements, your imbalances kind of reveal themselves. So you'd be doing core exercises and mobility movements for the spine, mobility movements for the hips and ankles, and then that should help prevent you from, having some of these kind of overuse injuries that can occur from doing something over and over again.
It is a factor too, and it's good. It's a good question because like sometimes people do have really rigorous jobs where they don't realize like all that stress, and then adding in like a really heavy workout on top of that may be overreaching at that point. Versus being like beneficial to you.
Yeah, I had a client that did a lot of work like this where he was bent over a lot, and we had to be careful with heavy deadlifts because then he couldn't do his job. Like if we did really, really heavy deadlifts and he got sore in his glutes and his back, especially his low back, if the muscles got sore, he would come back a few days later and be like, man, it was really hard for me to do my job. And it was really sore. And, because the muscle function or your function reduces a little bit because of the soreness, his risk of injury went up. So we were very careful when we did those types of exercises because I think your tendency or what you think may be natural is to work the muscles you're working a lot, right? Like, okay, since I'm swinging a hammer a lot, I need to exercise my forearms a lot. But sometimes that's not a good idea because you're overcoming your body's ability to recover.
Yeah, I like that he also addressed that right away. I mean, like, should I be doing counter movements? Should I be doing things like pressing more when I'm not doing that in my job? And I totally think that's a smart idea. Alongside that, having rotational movements and things that you could strengthen the patterns of your support system. So that way, your body will function overall better, which will then make your job easier and more manageable.
Yeah, I was going to say there's some value too because if it's that labor intensive that your back is getting sore, I would also be thinking about, okay, how am I moving throughout the day too? Like this is the hard part about answering these questions virtually and like not seeing how somebody moves because part of somebody having chronic low back pain or being bothered from their labor intense job could be like a movement thing. And then my routine is really kind of around like a MAPS Prime Pro where I'm looking at, your imbalances or I'm looking at how you hinge and how you do pick things up. And I'm actually just trying to get you to learn how to move better, which then will carry over into your work. Now, if your movement is all great, and I don't need to correct anything, then I would want to strengthen the exercises or the types of movements that you do throughout your day. So I may not stretch you or I may not push you like what Sal is saying on deadlifts. I don't want to get you sore to where but I definitely want to strength train you in like deadlifts and movements like that, because the stronger you get at movements that you're going to have to perform throughout your day, the easier your light day work is going to be.
You know what's funny about this is that, do you guys remember the first time you got a client whose job was very labor physical intensive?
Yeah, I had a FedEx loading guy, the first guy that came to mind when I was listening to this.
Yeah, and the reason why this was weird was because the vast majority of my clients were super inactive, just because that's the average job nowadays, especially in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
So I remember the first time I had someone, I was like, oh, this is going to be very different. Like, for you, I'm going to have you stretch and get massage and relax, and we're going to do recuperative movements. Whereas when I had the other people who were, working on computers all day long, I was like, yeah, we just need to increase your activity. constantly. Very, very different approach.
So to me, when I think of like how I would, with what we have, right, because we're dealing with this all virtually, I don't have this person in front of me. To me, I see a lot of value with this person owning like a Map Strong and owning a Prime Pro.
Yeah.
And I would weave in and out. Map Strong, I think, does a lot of like upper back strength and a lot of hinging, front rounded stuff where you'd be carrying, loading. So that program, as far as the training, great at strengthening and supporting somebody who's doing a job with this. Now, where you have to be able to come in as your own coach and know that if you had a crazy loaded week of work and your low back is killing you and fried, I wouldn't be following what maybe Map Strong says for that day. Maybe that day I'm working out of Maps Prime Pro and I'm addressing my hips and opening up my shoulders and I'm doing things like that to support what I just did. So, that's where even as great as we've done as far as creating all these great programs where you have to learn to customize things for each individual and whatever they're doing. Somebody like this, some days maybe he can get after it in the weight room and really strength train hard. But other days, maybe it was a really labor intense day and he's fried. And that day he might be living more in Prime Pro.
You know what also is good for these people is deep tissue massage. But if that's too expensive or difficult, foam roll. This would be a case where I'd say foam roll at the end of the day, every single day. I did that for my dad. My dad, he worked hard labor and he doesn't do it anymore. But when he did, I got him a foam roller. I taught him how to use the foam roller and it made a huge difference for him. He felt, because, after working all day long like that, things get really, really tight and the foam roller does a good job of kind of loosening things up so you can get good sleep and then go back to work the next day.